Hello, my friends. My name is Tommy Z, and today I want to talk to you about the art of reinvention, why you must, why you don't, and how to do it. And I just want to start you with a question and something for you to think about. If you only do what the algorithm says these days, then why will we need you in the future? I believe this is a very relevant question for us makers, creators, musicians, artists to think about. And this workshop is something I came up with for you, documenting my experience in reinvention. And I know something about reinvention because I have reinvented myself 11 times in 25 years, going from a corporate banker to a creative employee, going from a creative employee to a creative entrepreneur, going from a creative entrepreneur with one business to multiple businesses, going from creative entrepreneur to creative mentor, and many other reinventions in between. And today, I want to teach you everything I know about reinvention to help you to reinvent yourself. I discovered there are two kinds of interventions. Okay. The first kind is because I want to. It is self initiated and it is driven by your inner desire to evolve. Okay. So this is active. This is you authoring your journey. The second kind of reinvention is the one that is forced on you. It is a delayed reaction on your part. You're reacting to external circumstances which are forcing you to reinvent, and sometimes suddenly without warning. And I found in my life that you want to practice the first kind. You want to be proactive and you want to do it because you want to. Because the more you practice the first kind, the less likely you're going to become a victim of the second kind. And I can illustrate this in my own journey. I used to be a DJ. When I was first getting into DJing, I watched all these heroes of mine commanding thousands of people, 10,000 watts of sounds, the biggest clubs in Toronto. I idolized these guys. Their names were written in big font on flyers distributed all over the city. I wanted to be just like them. And I worked really hard to emulate them and their path. And a few years later, I found myself playing at the same big clubs, playing in front of thousands of people with my names on the flyer. And you know, the experience of DJing is so enthralling. It is so addictive. You're doing it night after night, weekend after weekend. And it is a very intense experience. Anyone who's ever been a DJ knows that there's no feeling like controlling 10,000 watts of sound and knowing that you have complete musical control over thousands of people in front of you. It becomes very addictive and you forget about everything else. And years can go by and you don't even realize that this is not a chapter that you can continue forever. And that's what the whisper of conscience started telling me. It started saying, as exciting as this is, can you continue this forever? And if not, then what is next? What is the next chapter and how are you going to prepare for it? And so I started actively researching other ways that I can actually turn music into a career, and eventually ended up stumbling into the world of music and brands, maybe by accident, maybe not so much, because now my eyes were open to other ways of making a living with music. And I ended up as a music producer in the world of music and brands and being responsible for creating original music and sound for some of the biggest brands and their campaigns. And so the moral of this story is, folks, when you are at the height of your career, no matter how good it feels, you want to ask yourself, does this feel like I can keep doing this for a long time to come? Because if not, it is already time to start thinking and taking proactive steps to writing your next chapter. And the interesting twist to this story is when I became a music producer in the world of music and brands, I ended up going to an Apple store in Toronto. And guess who I saw there? One of the DJs that I idolized was selling me an Apple MacBook. Okay. The DJ that I once idolized was now working at the Apple store selling me my MacBook. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working at the Apple store. It's probably a great job, and maybe that's exactly what he wanted. But he did, in fact, ask me. He said, "Oh, what's happening in the world of music and brands? I've never discovered it. I don't know anything about it. Are there any opportunities? Can I maybe make some music for you sometime?" So that shows you, friends, the power of proactively being aware and alert while on your journey and acting on the first kind of reinvention, which is driven by an inner desire to evolve rather than having to adjust the circumstances and being forced to reinvent, at which point you're going to be a lot less creative and you're going to have a lot less leeway in order to author your story. So, what I found in my journey is you want to keep asking yourself a question, a very simple one. And the question is, what's next? At a time when I was a corporate banker on Bay Street, my conscience started saying, can you do this forever? The honest reply was, no, I cannot probably do this forever. So, what's next? Right. And I started thinking, what could be next? I felt like I had a more of a creative soul. I didn't want to create spreadsheets. I wanted to create things and craft things that will actually move people. And I was not ready, obviously, to start my own business in the creative industry. So the next reasonable step was to find out about different ways of making a living as a musician, all of the possibilities that exist, and seeing which one I might be fit for the most as a next step. And that's exactly what happened. I found the world of music and brands. I found that my ability to communicate, my ability to be in between the artistry and the commerce made me a perfect combination of skills and experience in order to be a music producer in the world of music and brands. But even that wasn't enough. My conscience kept calling again and saying, hey, are you willing to do this for the rest of your life? And I said, well, I'm not willing to be a creative employee working for someone else for the rest of my life, but I can probably take a next step now that I know what this business is all about in order to start my own production company, which I eventually did. And guess what? My conscience kept asking me, okay, so are you going to be running a production company now for the rest of your life that is always being briefed by someone else? You're always creating money. You're always creating for somebody else. Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? And I'm like, well, it's not bad to have a production company that creates music for others, but I also want to evolve and I also want to use my superpowers to help others unlock theirs. And so I decided to start teaching everything I know, to stimulate myself, to stimulate the growth, to have to learn about the online world, to have to learn about recording these kind of videos and editing them and sharing my knowledge and wisdom, which I believe is a lot more fulfilling to me than producing another commercial. I've produced about 1,000 commercials now, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad way to spend your life because you're in the studio and you're getting paid for it. But if I take stock of all my skills and of all my desires, teaching and mentoring, having that kind of impact on real human beings out there who are struggling with finding a way to use their musical talent and not be homeless, I found that that is a lot more fulfilling than producing another commercial. And this is why I have started doing this. So what you want to do, folks, is you want to take pulse of your life. You want to carve out a slice of solitude in your busy days and take pulse. Okay. You want to scan the horizon and you want to ask yourself a very simple question. Where I am right now, this road, where is it leading me? And do I like where it's going to take me? Okay. If I don't do anything, if I just keep moving on this road, do I like where it's going to take me in 5 years? So you want to be very, very honest with yourself and very realistic about the path that you're on right now and wherever it's going to take you 5, 10 years from now. Is this what you can continue doing at a time when all the skills and all your network are actually going to come to fruition and really be serving you at that point? The fact is, folks, the world is not standing still. The question is, are you? Because, folks, the truth is reinvention is coming, okay? And reinvention is coming whether you like it or not. So you want to practice the first kind of reinvention, which is the proactive kind. You want to start thinking about things ahead of time and start taking steps before reality forces you to take those steps. Now, let me talk about some of the problems you're going to encounter in your journey of reinvention. And I have gone through this myself. So I can warn you so that you avoid making the same mistakes. When you want to reinvent, what happens is you give birth to two different forces. They are, in fact, opposing forces which make you stuck. On one hand, you desire success, you desire reinvention, you desire to realize your superpowers for the good of your family, of the world, and everything else. But the bigger the dream, at the same time, you have an opposing force that is opposing this desire, and that is the fear of failure. You're desiring not to fail. And essentially, what this is it's procrastination. And procrastination is a protective mechanism, okay? It's basically a flawed thinking that says, well, if I don't do anything, I cannot fail. And if I don't fail, then I'm preserving my identity, my self-worth. I am not a failure, okay? Because in our distorted thinking, to fail means to die, which is actually far from the truth. And there's another smart man named Coach John Wooden. He said, if you treat every game as life and death, you're going to be dead a lot. The fact is, folks, the world is not standing still. So we cannot afford to be stuck either. We cannot afford to stand still. But the reason you're standing still is because of these two opposing forces. Okay. Now, the truth is, procrastination is no protection at all. Okay. Because failure to act is failure to learn. How can you learn anything when you're standing still? And if you fail to learn, you're failing to adapt. And if you fail to adapt, any smart person will tell you you will fail to exist. Okay. Failure to adapt is a fatal failure. Your survival, this is where fear comes from. This is the lizard brain. I want you to hypnotize your lizard brain with this mantra. When the fear of not trying becomes greater than the fear of failing, you will begin to move. Let me repeat that once again, and I want you to let it sink in into your lizard brain. When the fear of not trying becomes greater than the fear of failing, you will begin to move. And what it means in practice is simply this: make your fear of not trying greater than your fear of failure. Or put another way, make your fear of regret, which will inevitably happen if you don't move, make your fear of regret greater than your fear of failure. What you have to remember is no failure is going to be fatal when you proceed with reinvention. No failure is going to be fatal, and you will make sure of that. You're not going to be doing it irresponsibly. You're not crazy. You're not stupid. You're going to plant each step one after another in a smart, considered way. Why? Because you're practicing the first kind of reinvention. So you have the time. There's nothing urgent yet, but it is important that you move forward. And that's very different from when reality is forcing your reinvention. And now you feel the pressure. Now there's no time. Now suddenly you got to do something. When you got to do something suddenly, very often there's no time to think about it. You just got to do what reality tells you to do. And that's when you start feeling frustration, a deep frustration, because you do not feel control over your life. Now, what you also want to do is sit down with your journal. You want to give yourself some positive reasons, something that will emotionally move you to action. It could be being motivated by your kids, who, if you're a parent, you know, they don't listen to you, they watch you. Okay, so what kind of lesson do you want to give your kids through the way that you act, through the choices that you make? You might remind yourself that according to our best knowledge, we only live once. Time is precious. So what are you really afraid of? Okay, we're all in the same boat and nobody's getting out alive. So let's just do something. Let's plan out our journey in a way where, sure, we might fail, but none of it will be fatal. You might tell yourself, hey, I'm the author of this story. Why am I letting the world write my book for me? I have the capacity and the potential to write this book. The question is, will I want to read it at the end of the journey? Will my grandkids want to read it? Will they learn something from it? Right? Remind yourself in your journal that you won't regret failing. Failure is not something that you're going to think about at the end of your life. It is not having tried at all. Okay. And these are the precise things that I would write in my journal that actually motivated me to move forward. The key here is, folks, that what we want to do is we want to tip the scales toward an action motive and not the avoidance motive. The avoidance motive is when you're letting your lizard brain run your life. and it's convincing you of all sorts of distorted ways of thinking that you believe to be true. Like, for instance, if I try and fail, then I'm finished, I am dead. Well, that's literally not true, but it is actually what is running your operating system, and it's causing you to procrastinate. It's motivating you to avoid rather than to act. The whole trick, folks, is to tip the scales toward motives of action. And now we get to the practical system that has evolved in my life, basically from something complex and totally ineffective to a very simple system that has proven time and time again to work wonders in my life and in my reinvention. And the simple principle here is I want you to forget about long term planning, these huge resolutions, these complex plans, because eventually they're going to drive you crazy. Okay. People are doing like 25, 10-year, 5-year plans. Folks, you don't even know if you're going to be around then. So why would you waste your time on trying to predict or plan something that is not even within our control? I want you to start living in date tight compartments. I don't want you to worry about 5 years, 10 years from now. I don't want you to worry about anything except for today. Today, just take care of today. The reality is, there is no tomorrow, folks. There is no yesterday, and you don't have to solve everything at once. All that I'm asking you to consider is just solve the next moment. Just solve today. The reality is, folks, you can't work on your destiny. That's an abstract concept. But you can certainly work on this day. That's a very concrete fact. And if you implement the right actions and repeat them day after day after day after day, these days and these actions will compound into your destiny. So here's a simple 3-step plan to help you with your reinvention. Number one, I want you to list out all key areas of your life. When you carve out a slice of solitude in your lunch hour, you eat lunch alone with your journal, just write down what comes to mind as an area in your life that needs attention. Preferably, write down all the areas in which you're actively involved in and in which you want to do well. Secondly, you want to write a crisp and compelling optimal state for each area. This is essentially an affirmation. Think of it as a short statement that describes the ideal situation, how you are optimally in each of these areas. And number three, we're going to list simple but significant daily action that you will perform every single day in each area. So we're talking about three things: areas, aspirations, and actions. And you can see here that I'm doing some analog work on the right hand side. I have these cue cards that I carry with me everywhere that describe the 7 areas of my life, which I will tell you in a second what they are. And you see on these cue cards, I actually have the aspiration. This is the optimal end state. This is the happy ending. This is the ideal that I aspire to in my daily work. And on the flip side of these cards, which you won't see here, but there's the simple actions that I have to perform every day. These actions turn into habits, and these habits basically turn into a different me. Done over enough days in a row, they turn into my destiny. So in my case, and this will be different for everybody, I have 7 key areas, and these are faith, family, fitness, fruit. By fruit, I mean good fruit, that I'm producing things that are valuable to others, finance, folks, and fun. I have thought about this a great deal, and I'm not sure there's any areas here that I could take away and feel that my life is complete and fulfilling. And there's no other areas that I can think of to add to this list. These are my areas. Please feel free to reflect deeply on your life and what you would consider to be your primary areas. And let's take area like fitness. I write down on my cue card, you can do this wherever you like, but just write down a brief statement of the ideal state. So for me, in the case of fitness, it is I keep my mind, body, and soul active, healthy, vibrant, clean, lean, so I can be peacefully prolific and useful to others while being able to live with full engagement, mental, physical, and spiritual. And this is a statement that is crisp, clear, and compelling. It makes me want to move on this and to help me get closer to the truth of that statement. I just have to look at the statement and go, am I actually living this? And finally, we bring it down to this day and small, simple actions. So, in the case of fitness, every single morning, I ride my stationary bike for 30 minutes. While I'm on the bike, I'm probably reading or studying or taking some kind of online course to help to sharpen my mind and to evolve my skills. And right after the bike, this routine is now set and it's been a rhythm for many, many months in my life. 7-minute meditation right after the ride to make sure that I am alert, that I am aware, that my mind, I can observe it. It might be scrambling. A lot of times it's, running all over the place. It is totally scattered. But I practice the muscle of bringing my mind to my breath and therefore practicing control over my senses. It's definitely something you want to do if you want to feel like you're in control of your life. Now, the key to making the system work is that you want to consider these 4 S's. You want to keep the daily actions very simple, okay? It has to be a very clear and specific step and write down exactly when you're going to do it. So for me, I always get on the bike after walking my daughter to school. It's mechanical now. I'm like a robot. I come home, I put on my running shoes, I change into shorts, and I just jump on the bike. You want to make it small, something that you can do daily, because the whole secret of this system is that you want to perform these actions daily for a very, very long time, maybe even for the rest of your life. Why not? Right? What you want to make sure is that you can incorporate this action into your busy day. And I can certainly give 30 minutes of my day in the morning before my day starts to riding the bike, doing some learning, and doing some meditating. I find it stays with me throughout the whole day, and the benefits have been life-changing. Number 3, you want to keep things significant. You want to ask yourself, okay, is this not just any action, but an action that compounded over time is going to make a significant difference in this area? And guess what? Riding your bike for 30 minutes at a certain heart rate, for me, it's between 115 and 125 beats per minute. If I do this every single day for months, for years, you better believe my life is changing, my health is changing, my psychology is changing. And just imagine, while I'm on the bike every single day for 30 minutes, I'm also learning. I'm also reading. Think how many thousands of pages I've read or how many modules of courses that have helped me to evolve my skills I have taken. And all of these have served me before my day has even begun to level up in my life and work. And lastly, what you want to do is look for synergies between your areas and between your actions. And this fitness routine that I have is a perfect example of this. I'm addressing a few different areas at once. So I'm addressing my fitness, obviously, mind, body, and soul, but I'm also addressing the fruit. Because if I learn how to build an online course, then I can create one. If I learn about paid advertising, then I can promote my online course. If I learn the latest ways of reaching out to my best prospects on LinkedIn, that's going to improve the business for my production company. So folks, to sum up today, what do we learn? We learned that who is not reinventing is actually dying. We've learned there are 2 kinds of reinvention, and you always want to pick the first. We've learned that if you fear regret more than failure, you will probably tip the scales toward action. You learned that reinvention is not something you can work on directly. Your destiny is not something you can work on directly, but this day is something that you can definitely work on directly. We've learned that we should identify our major areas in our life, and we should set an ideal destination for each. And then once we have this ideal end state for each area of our life, we want to list a simple, daily, specific, significant action for each area. Okay. And we also want to seek synergies when we're designing our daily actions so we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, I don't want you to kill any birds, but you know what I mean. And most of all, folks, we've learned not to worry about tomorrow, not to worry about yesterday. Don't worry. Just work. Work actively, proactively, being alert, aware on your journey, but just concerning yourself with this day forward. Now, folks, life is short. You want to actually be following folks who feed you well, and my intention is to feed you well. I hope you found this workshop nourishing. Now, folks, if you're a musician with a home studio who wants to make a living from music and you believe you have the talent to do so, Let me show you a different way that you can do it without selling, streaming, or touring. The free training is below. Once you take the free training, you can decide if you want to get serious about it and take the next steps. And finally, folks, I am going to experiment with something new. If you need help with your reinvention, we are actually starting a coaching program with me. It's called the Reinvention, and you can find all of the details in a link that we will place in the description below. The number of seats is limited for this. This is an experiment that we're going to run. If enough people sign up, we're going to do this, but we're also going to cap the amount of people that are able to sign up because I want to keep it small and I want to actually keep it effective. You can find out all the details in a link, which we will place in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you should watch this one. I think it will definitely make a difference in your journey.